One construction project, 7 risk processes all in the plan, but one of them was never actually implemented. Not because they didn't know about it, not because the plan was wrong, but because nobody was actually watching out for it. And that silence cost the project $2.3 million. And we're going to get into that story in detail here in a second. But first, I need to show you the chain that was broken that created this mess to start off with. This is the risk management process chain. 7 processes linked in sequence. Break one link and the whole chain is going to fail. PMI defines these 7 risk management processes, and by the end of this video, you will know all 7 and exactly which ones most organizations quietly tend to skip. And that silence is what costs projects and project managers time, cost, and ruins the scope of what you're working on. For anyone who's new here, I'm Russ Parker, the owner of 44 Risk PM. I'm a PMP, PMI RMP, PMI authorized training partner, and authorized training partner instructor for the PMP and RMP. I'm a retired Marine Corps officer, and I've taught this framework to hundreds of students over the course of the past couple of years. I've watched teams execute this on real projects. So what I'm about to give you is both focused on ensuring that your team keeps your risk management processes together and ensures that they don't fall apart. So here's the map of the 7 processes that we're going to work with throughout this video. And you're probably thinking right away, they're just the steps in a sequence that you already know when it comes to risk management. You follow them in order, you check the boxes, and you're done. But that's not actually how these processes work. Each process produces an output, and that output is the required input for the next process. So process outputs feed the process inputs. If we don't have a risk management plan from process 1, you cannot effectively start running process 2, risk identification. If you don't have a risk register from process 2, you can't jump into process 3, qualitative risk analysis. This chain is not optional, and the exam that's going to test you on this knows that. So let's jump into process 1, which is all about planning risk management. For the exam, this falls into your risk strategy and planning, which counts for 22% of your exam. This first process is the governance architecture of the entire risk effort. This is not a list of risks. This is an analysis. This is all about the decisions that determine how are you going to do everything else when it comes to your risk management process. The risk management plan answers 4 governance questions that you need to know before you get into your project. First, what are our risk appetite, tolerance, and thresholds? 2, what scales do we use for our probability and impact? 3, how often do we review our risks? And 4, who has the authority to act when it comes to risks? It's important to note here that the risk management plan is a part of the entire project management plan. And PMI is going to test whether you know it lives within the overall plan structure. So that you're not just going to be tested on the risk management plan. You still need to understand the concepts behind scope management, schedule management, and all the other different management plans that fall within the project management plan. Now, when it comes to process 1, most project teams treat it as an administrative overhead. They write the plan, they file it, but then they never look at it again. The exam does not care how you treated risks in your last project. Yes, they want you to do lessons learned, but you need to set a risk management plan that attacks the project that you're on, because it cares whether you understand that the plan drives the process. But governance without identification is just documentation. And that's where process 2 comes into the mix. And it's something that RMP students tend to make one of their first mistakes overall. So process 2 is identify risks. This sits into the second domain of your PMI RMP exam content outline, risk identification, which accounts for 23% of your exam. Your job here is a comprehensive capture. We're not doing analysis. We're not doing response planning yet. We are capturing the risks associated to our projects. 4 identification techniques that I love to teach and are like foundation of what you need to understand: brainstorming, assumption log analysis, SWOT analysis, and then also we had the famous Delphi technique. Brainstorming is team-based. It's facilitated, and it is the broadest way to capture your risks. Assumption log is simple. You're systematically challenging every assumption that you make in your plan. SWOT analysis maps your strengths and weaknesses to those external threats and opportunities. While the Delphi technique is using anonymous feedback from your stakeholders to gain a consensus on your top-level risks. And the output of process 2 is that we have an unprioritized, comprehensive risk register. Emphasis here, risk register, not a risk report. The risk register, that is where our risks are logged. That's where our risks live with their probability, their impact, their owner, their responses, their triggers, all the necessary information associated with each of our risks. A risk report is a stakeholder communication document. Sometimes it can have some of the same content, but it has different purposes, different audiences, and it's built in a different way. And PMI can test the distinction between these two. So before process 3, a quick resource for you. I do have a free risk register template waiting for you right now. You can use it on your next project or whatever you need to. The link is going to be down in the description. Now, process 3 is where your gut feeling gets replaced by math. And this is all about performing qualitative risk analysis. This falls into the risk analysis portion of the exam content outline and accounts for 23% of your exam, and it's shared with process 4, which we'll get into next. This is all about where you prioritize which risks deserve your attention. Not all risks are created equal. And this process's goal is to sort them out. And the primary tool that we use to do that is the probability and impact matrix. I'm sure you've seen this tool before. 2 axes, probability on one side, impact on the other. Both scored on a scale you define back in process 1, which again shows that this all interlinks. Process 1, we define how is our probability and impact matrix going to be laid out? How are we going to use this? And there are 3 main zones that we worry about on this matrix. You have the red zone, which is your high probability, high impact, the risks that you probably need to act on now. You have the yellow zone, the moderate, watch, prepare for them in case they happen. Then you have the green zone, the low, maybe accept, monitor them throughout the project. Qualitative analysis is fast and subjective. It uses judgment and experience to score your risks. And it doesn't always require a mathematical modeling to get that done. If the question asks you on the exam, it mentions anything about probability distributions or simulations, that is process 4, which we're going to get into next. The whole point behind this risk matrix, the probability impact, is to tell you which risks rank the highest, but it does not tell you what they cost, or it doesn't put a number value associated to them. And that is what process 4 is all about. And that is perform quantitative risk analysis. This again falls into that risk analysis portion of your exam content outline and accounts for 23% of the exam shared with process 3. This is where we start assigning numbers to the uncertainty for our risks. The number one tool we can expect to use here is expected monetary value, and that is probability times impact. This is the core and the simplest tool that we can use for quantitative risk analysis. Now, don't get EMV confused with EVM, and don't get the formula confused with our probability impact matrix that we use during qualitative risk analysis. Walk this with me. You have a risk. 30% probability of it occurring. If it occurs, the cost is $500,000. The EMV formula then is 0.30 for 30% times 500,000. That gives us $150,000. That is your risk reserve contribution from that one risk. Now we can also use this for time. We can get days, weeks, months that we need to put in reserve as well. The whole trick here is that we're developing a probability tax. And that's why I like to call it EMV, and I like to say it develops a probability tax. Every risk has a tax. You're just calculating what it is. Now, not all projects are always going to require quantitative analysis. PMI states that when we use this is usually during high stakes decisions, large reserve calculation, complex schedule risks. It's not required for every project. For real life, I'd say you want to do this for every project. But for the exam, just know that you don't always have to use this. Now, the second major quantitative tool that you can see on your exam is a Monte Carlo simulation. Monte Carlo uses 3-point estimates. Something I'm sure you remember from the PMP or Kappa is that optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic look at your numbers. And what the Monte Carlo likes to do is run this model thousands of times and gives us an output of a histogram or an S-curve showing the probability of hitting the cost or schedule target as you put it in there. I built a free Monte Carlo tool at riskreadypm.com. I'll throw the link down in the description. It does a lot of this math for you and shows you how to interpret the results associated to a Monte Carlo analysis. Now, once we finish our analysis with qualitative, and then we move into quantitative risk analysis, what we are able to do is get ourselves a prioritized list of risks within that risk register. So if you remember from process 2, identify risks, we had a list of risks that were not prioritized. Now, with our analysis tools, we're able to prioritize those lists based off their financial and their schedule impacts. And the output of what we get through this analysis is the prioritized list of risks that helps us move into the next process. And that process is all about figuring out what we're going to do with these risks. And PMI doesn't want you just to know what these strategies are. They want you to know how to use the right ones. So process 5 is plan risk responses. This falls into the exam content outline, risk response, which is 13% of your exam. When it comes to planning risk responses, we're looking at 2 categories: threats and opportunities. For threat risk response strategies, we have avoid, transfer, mitigate, accept, and escalate. Threat responses, 5 primary strategies. Avoid, change the plan to eliminate the threat entirely. Transfer, we're shifting the financial impact to a third party. Think insurance or a contract clause. Mitigate, we're reducing that probability of impact before it ever occurs. Accept, we're acknowledging it. We're being not passive, we're actively accepting to prepare, we're preparing the contingency or some type of reserve associated to it. Or we escalate. This is when the risk is outside our level of control. So we send it to the program, portfolio, sponsor, whoever needs to actually make the decision on that risk. For these, ensure you do not confuse escalate with accept. Escalate, we're pushing it up. Accept, we are accepting what is going to happen and preparing for it. Next, we have opportunity response strategies. Here we have exploit, share, enhance, accept, escalate. Opportunity responses, again, 5 strategies. Exploit is the eliminate the uncertainty. Guarantee that the upside, whatever the opportunity, actually is going to happen. Share, now we're partnering with somebody to make sure that we're better positioned to capture the opportunity overall. Enhance means that we're increasing the probability or impact of the opportunity. Accept, we're taking it as it comes, but we're not actively pursuing it overall in the project. And again, escalate, the risk is outside your level of control, so you're sending it to someone who can actually take care of that opportunity for the level that is designated for. The exam trap I see here all the time is exploit versus enhance. Enhance is going to increase your probability. Exploit eliminates the uncertainty. Not the same. PMI is going to draw that line sharply and test you that on the exam. So now we have planned. We have analyzed. We have designated responses for each one of our risks. So the output we have here is a risk register that's prioritized and planned against for all our top level risks. Now comes the process that you cannot miss in throughout all of this, because this is where I've seen personally real money and time get lost. And that is process 6, implement your risk responses. This falls into the risk response category on the exam content outline, and it's a part of that 13% total for the exam, a part of process 5. This is the execution layer of what we've put together. Risk responses exist on paper. The process is what makes them real. So most organizations, they're excellent at process 5. They're good at saying, hey, this is the risk. This is what we're going to do about it. They write a detailed, well-structured response plan. But then process 6 gets assigned to a calendar event. It's a reminder that nobody actually checks. People stop coming to the meeting because nothing's happened the past 3 or 4 weeks. The risk owners are the ones who do it. And a risk owner should be someone who's influential and capable of activating the risk response once the risk trigger is tripped. Understanding that the PM and the risk owner are different entities is critical, and the distinction matters because the PM's job in process 6 is to ensure that the risk owners are doing their job and acting accordance to the risk response planning we put together. And that requires monitoring, That requires not doing everything in the beginning, but keeping the information going. Here in process 6, we're seeing work performance data flow in and work performance information flow out. Hopefully you remember those terms from the PMP and CAPM, because PMI is going to test whether you can distinguish what comes in versus what comes out of each process. And for this one, we're looking at how are we actually going to do the response for the risks? Are we assigning owners? Are we keeping up with these risks as the program progresses? A case story on this is the project I brought up in the beginning of this video. Thinking about a 14-story commercial construction build somewhere in the Southeast US, where I'm at down in Florida. They have a fully documented risk register, named risk owners, response plans in place. One of the identified risks that we associated to this project is a subcontractor's financial instability. We developed a response that quarterly financial reviews of key subcontractors would happen continuously. The risk owner we had assigned was the procurement lead. Month 1, the review happened. Months 2 through 6, it stopped happening. Nobody escalated. Nobody asked. Nobody checked. They just assumed that these subcontractors were doing their job. But then month 7 hit and the primary steel subcontractor defaulted. In turn, work stopped. The replacement sourcing took 11 weeks to get together. The cost overrun was $2.3 million. So the risk was identified. It was assigned. The risk response was planned. But the process 6 broke the chain. The link between the planning and the action was never forged, which brings us into process 7, monitoring our risks. And this is the continuous oversight layer. It runs from planning all the way through project closure. And the monitor risk toolkit that we use are things like risk audits, reserve analysis, variance reports, and risk reassessments. A risk audit is a formal examination of your risk processes and the effectiveness of them. And reserve analysis is, are our contingency reserves still appropriate for where we're at right now? Variance reports are the actual results deviating from what was planned in the original setup of the project? And risk reassessments are triggered whenever conditions change. So when you have a huge change request, when you have a risk that turns into an issue that causes you a lot of stress and changes your project, it is time to reassess our risks and get back into it. The important note here is that process 7 also involves identifying new risks. The risk environment changes throughout the project. So monitor risk is not a passive checkpoint. It is an active surveillance function that we put throughout our project. So process 7 does not just close the cycle. It actually restarts it. Because when you do a risk reassessment and you surface the new information, you feed that back into process 1. You run through those updated thresholds. You see where you're updating your register. You're going through new identification sections. You're going through all of the different analysis tools. The process chain is a loop. It's not a line. And that is by design to make sure that you are actually getting through and identifying your risks, responding to them accordingly, and tracking them throughout the project. And the exam is going to test whether you understand that. So the fast recap of the project risk management process chain is the 7 processes. 1, plan risk management, governance architecture. 2, identify the risks, the comprehensive capture of everything that we can identify. 3 is qualitative risk analysis. That's our priority ranking, how we start getting these things put up in a prioritized fashion. 4 is our quantitative risk analysis. That's that value assignment, the dollar or the schedule amount. 5 is the planned risk responses. Now we have strategies for our threats and our opportunities. 6 is the implement the risk responses. This is where our plans become actions or they don't. And 7 is monitor risks. This is where we have that continuous loop. And it all feeds back to process 1 to keep this loop going until our project program portfolio closes. So now you know the 7 processes. More than that, you understand why they exist in the first place and in that order. And you know which one can break your project if it's skipped. And that is what separates a risk professional from someone who just does risk management. Proactive over reactive. That is the standard. So 2 things before you go. First, grab that risk register template down in the description. It's built to help you out and make sure that you are managing your risks the right way. Second, if you are preparing for the PMI RMP exam, my RMP exam prep course is your next step. 30 hours we're going to spend going into detail about everything around project risk management. If you already have your 30 hours and you just want more support, my RMP Prep Lab is the study preparation community that I have set up. Practice questions, resources for passing the exam, and for surviving after the exam. All the links are going to be posted down in the description. And you can always find more information at 44riskpm.com. Stay motivated, stay dedicated. 44riskpm, out.